Well, hello everybody, and welcome to Hash Church. I'm the Reverend Bubbleman. Not really, but it's kind of fun to say. Today we had a little bit of troubles getting Hash Church going, I'm not going to lie. I think when some of my friends go into the link a little bit early, it makes it so it won't go live for some reason. So it was a little bit slow. I had to kick a few people out, but they were very gracious and kind and got out right away. Thank you guys. And so I guess we're live. And we're live here from Toronto. I'm back in Toronto and it's fucking snowing like crazy outside. I don't know if you guys can actually see that. It looks like it's just too bright, but it's snowing, I assure you. Snowing hard. And so, yeah. Amsterdam, so I'm quite excited about that. I guess the first thing really to do here is turn off my phone because it's going to start talking to me. Isn't that strange? Did you hear that? She just started talking. All right, so let's get some of these links up here. I'm going to invite some of the folks into Hash Church because, well, it's a little bit much sometimes when it's just me alone. So bear with me. It's going to take me a little bit of a while to get these links all up. Invite in Johnny B, and we'll see if he can get in today without his speaker sounds that usually happen. We're going to try and get Darrin in today. Hopefully he's going to be around. We've had a few problems with him the last few times. Send that. Who else? Sorry about the start of church here, guys. It's always kind of like this when I got to send out the links. Everyone's got to get the link. At least the first few folks. See if Jendo in Amsterdam wants to come in and play. We got Tony. I guess Tony's a little bit too busy today.
What's up, buddy?
I hear someone coming in with something. Hello, hello? Johnny B. How are you, John? Hello, John.
Exceedingly low volume.
Hello, John. Just making sure that you can hear me because you were trying to completely ignoring me. Man, you look like you're in the work zone. I'm guessing John can't hear me because he's not replying
no volume.
to anything I say.
Cannot hear you.
Can't hear me?
I'm going to the computer now.
Well, you figure out your things. Hello, Horatio. Welcome, welcome.
Morning, morning.
I'm glad you can hear me.
What's going on? We're finally live. Are the angry mobs in the pitchforks? Are they okay?
No angry mobs. I'm just when I go on Facebook to send like a link. Literally, I guess people see that I'm on Facebook, and then I get 100 messages at once, all at once. Boom, 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 boom. And so I guess it's a little bit overwhelming the way I've got it set up. I've got one small computer. And I'm trying to watch the Google Hangout. I'm trying to watch my Facebook page as well as the Bubbleman Facebook page for people asking for links. And then I'm also trying to watch the chat that everyone's in right now. So, yeah, just
a couple of tabs.
Oh, thanks, Stews. Yeah, I guess John didn't have his sound turned on for me, so that's why he couldn't hear me. So we got that figured out. John will go figure his stuff out, and I'm sure he'll make his way back into church. Welcome John and Horatio here into church. So,
Good Jamaica trip. I saw the videos last night. It looked good.
People Jamaica was amazing. I'm gonna go out on a limb and hello there, Dane.
What's up, everybody? Just woke up, came back from the DNA party, the launch party we had in Denver.
Yeah, I guess John did. You'll need to mute the YouTube video so we can't hear my voice coming through your speakers. Once you do that, we're solid. We're solid.
My bad, that's a good move.
How was that party last night, dude?
It was really fun. It was at a bowling alley with a bunch of like old school arcade games set up. So we had like a mezzanine in the bowling alley below it, and everyone just had fun, man. I got video of Don and Aaron like dancing all crazy and shit, and everyone just having a good time. So it was fun.
That's awesome, dude. Great to hear that. Great to hear that. Man, do I look red? I just look red right now.
I didn't want to ask if it was a tan or no, or just the lighting.
No, it's totally the lighting, dude. I'm not red at all. It's like the worst lighting you could ever possibly be in this room. Let me open the windows a bit. It's snowing like a motherfucker here, too.
It's snowing?
Yeah, jumping hard.
It's snowing here too. We have about 6 inches on the ground.
Woo!
Up in the mountains.
Dude, I so wanted to be at that DNA party last night. I was literally in Toronto, sitting here basically doing nothing.
Damn.
I know. Next time. Hey,
You'll be in Amsterdam in a few days, though, right?
What's that?
You'll be in Amsterdam in only a few days, right?
Yeah, I'll be in Amsterdam in a couple of days, exactly.
Hell
We got
yeah.
187 viewers happening, guys. That's a good amount of viewers for early on in church.
It's a nice thing.
I'm not sure I've even posted the link yet. Maybe I have. Did I post this yet? Oh, Horatio, have you heard of the radio show, The Adam Dunn Show? I asked them about LHO, and it seemed like this Wednesday they will be covering the topic on their live air. Well, if they cover that topic, Mike, I will make a point on calling Adam and getting Horatio to call in so he can be a part of it.
Yeah, that would be. I didn't know that was happening, but I guess I'm tuning in on Wednesday.
I guess I'm tuning in on Wednesday.
You will be tuning in on Wednesday, absolutely, because
Yeah.
you're the LHO guy.
I'll hear about my LHO. I didn't know it was still there long enough to discuss, but possibly.
Hey, everything's discussable. Look how fast things happen in this day and age. I mean, my goodness. Every day I wake up, I see you posting pictures of dry sift. It puts a smile on my face.
Man, I'm breaking my wrist off trying to get it done as fast as I can.
Well, don't break your wrist.
Oh, the
All right,
screws are
time for a
flexible,
dab.
but
I don't think Horatio slept last night too much because he was making hash all night.
That's how
no,
it goes.
there was no sleep. And then trying
Ooh,
to
Somali taxi cab driver. I got sweet skunk dry sift.
I got
Smells like urine. Smells like piss. No joke.
that's off of full milk bubble hash, 120 U.
Oh, melt. Well, this is awesome. We could potentially have our biggest church yet, guys, because we are already at 207 viewers. We only went live a few minutes ago, and I don't think we've gone over 220 or 30 viewers since we started. So if any of you guys listening want to link this out, send the link out into your Facebooks and your Twitter feeds and all that sort of thing, we would appreciate it. The more people, the merrier. And if you guys want to chat in church, send me a link on my Facebook page. And I'll be checking the page throughout this church, so if we get a message, I can send you the link. If you want to talk, we want talkers. And Nay is a talker, so we'll invite Nay in. He's always got things to say. Justin Altrez wants the link.
I did something unique this morning. Am I even being heard?
yeah,
My camera working?
yeah.
All right, what do we got here? We sent out all these links. There we go. Message 9. I need a link to Hash Church, please. Oh, Canalytical Labs wanted to come in today, and he has some interesting things he wants to talk to us about. He's a smart dude. He wrote me a whole huge thing, and he's writing about just wanting to talk about bubble and contaminants and mixing and cannabinoids and endocannabinoid systems and this, that, and the other thing. So I have since invited him in as well. So hopefully some of these guys will come on in and share a little bit of information with us. And in the meantime, I'm going to have a dab. Dab.
Oh,
So some of this MLP that you cleaned.
God, it's snowing so crazy here. It's insane.
So my morning was, I think it's like -5 here, and my outdoor plant was frozen solid. So I did a fresh frozen live plant.
Fresh frozen solid. Welcome, Nay. Welcome, Analytical.
Hi, I'm Kevin.
Well, welcome, Kevin. We're happy to have you, and we all know who Nay is. Where is Nay? Why is it showing my camera? Oh, that's weird. You tripped me out, dude.
Because I'm simulcasting you.
Dude, I know you tripped me out so hard. I was like, why am I in Nay's camera? All right. I'm not tripped out anymore. Well, that's awesome, John. I look forward to seeing and hearing about your fresh frozen solid plant and the run that you get out of it.
I'll probably do it around Christmas time.
Christmas hash. I guess this is the time of year, isn't it?
I have a bag of fresh frozen in the freezer for Christmas Day. 100.
All right, we're going to invite Pierre in. Remember, anyone that we invite in, you guys are all welcome to come on in, but just at one point in time, join the conversation. I'm not saying that to the people in the room. I'm saying that to those who keep messaging me, asking me to come in. I have room for 10. One of the mics is repeating my mic. So let's see which one it is.
Wait. Here.
Here, I'm gonna mute myself.
Yeah, Johnny, let's try. No. Hello? Yeah, I guess that one was it. I guess easy enough is to, whenever someone's talking, the rest of us will mute our mics, me included. So that's easy enough. And that's really the simple rule in here. Just mute your mic when you're not talking. Welcome, Larry. We just told everyone in here that if you are not talking, have your mic muted, and then the minute you want to chat, just unmute your mic, and we do welcome you. Happy to have you guys all here in Hash Church. And I'm feeling a little bit better this Hash Church. Last church, everyone was like, man, Bubbleman seemed so pissed off. I got to admit, I was a little stressed out having to fly and not knowing the time of my flight. And then the guys at the Vapor Lounge, I guess they told me I could film there. And I said, well, I'd need the music turned off, and they were like, no problem. But when I got there, they kept the music on the whole time. So I apologize for that. That won't happen again. It's easier if we can hear each other talk. Welcome, Justin. And I guess I'm going to start off this Hash Church by telling you guys a little bit about Jamaica. I just got back from Kingston, Jamaica. I was at the Scientific Review Committee, SRC's third biannual conference. They do a conference. They have a 2-day conference in regards to different. It's a plant-based medicine conference. So cannabis was a big chunk of the focus, and local Jamaican Mr. Henry Lowe, who is producing some salves and some creams and some products, and he's got a company named Ganja. They were there representing, as well as Canisol, which is a glaucoma eye drop that they've been making in Jamaica since the 70s. And, of course, CRD, Cannabinoid Research and Development, in collaboration with United Cannabis. We were there representing hard. I mean, really, I felt that at any given time there were 25-plus people around our booth, and between myself and Tony Verzura, of course, one of our reverends here in Hash Church, not able to make it today because he's packing up. He's partied all night long. With the River Rock and DNA guys. And Dane, it's amazing you're in here because you probably went to sleep 4 minutes ago.
Yeah, I just woke up to do my social media posts and go back and crash, and you hit me up on Facebook, so here I am.
Right on, dude. Well, we're glad that you came in for a little visit. So Jamaica was amazing. It was incredible to see one of the ministers got up there. I'm not sure which one he was. Howell, I believe his name was. And he was talking about how it's got to happen and we got to make this happen. And you had the Rastafarian community was there talking about making sure that if it does happen, that the farmers and the poor people, the sufferers, who have been on the front line of cannabis and the repercussions of cannabis, the beatings, the jailings, the incarcerated and beaten and you know, lives ruined. These are the people that have been on the front lines, and of course we hope that when these companies come into Jamaica that they facilitate things in a symbiotic way. you know, in a way that is more in tune with what everyone wants to have happen. We don't need big companies coming in and paying Jamaican farmers a slave wage to grow them cannabis so they can take that cannabis and export it off the island. This is not the mission statement of CRD, and it is definitely not the mission statement of United Cannabis. We want to work in conjunction, and we want to make it a win-win. We're just we love the idea of being able to go to Jamaica and help and change the world. Because for me, from the first time I went to Jamaica, I felt that it was a central point for cannabis in the world. I felt that about only a few places that I visited, and Jamaica was definitely one. You got to get a little deeper than just the surface tourism that is available to everyone, but I think that once you do, you really find out the beauty and the magic behind the Jamaican people and the island and the vibes and the music and the food. It's just all really good. Can you tell I love Jamaica?
A little bit.
Yeah.
Do you love Jamaica?
Who wouldn't?
Might be fond of a few Jamaicans.
Is that Horatio?
You might be fond of a few Jamaicans in your habits. You know,
Yeah.
I see
You know,
Jamaican.
on this last trip, to give you guys an example, I went to this last trip, and you know, I'm in a conference, I'm kind of wearing a button-up shirt, most of these dudes are probably looking at me like, who the fuck is this guy? But then I have my history as Bubbleman. And so one guy who was kind of questioning me and a little bit like standoffish was with this other guy. And this other guy had an accent, and I kind of recognized it. I was like, hey, do you know any other people with that accent here? And he's like, blah, 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 why? And I'm like, oh, I don't know, I met a guy like 15 years ago, and like he had an accent like that, and I made a bunch of hash with him. I showed him how to make hash, and he then took that knowledge and he went forward into the world, and he helped out a lot of people. I won't mention where or how or what, but he really did incredible, amazing work with being shown simply one time by me in Jamaica 15 years ago how to make really nice hash, water hash. And so get this, it was the guy. He was in my hotel room. I haven't seen him in 15 years, and I basically dropped this name, and he looks at me and he's like, that's me. I didn't recognize him because he had this huge beard, and he didn't recognize me because I cut off all my hair and was wearing like a button-up shirt. But I tell you, man, that was a trip. It's like a revelation. You know, that's when you know you're exactly where you're supposed to be, in my opinion.
Oh, for sure.
That synchronicity, absolutely. Just the fact he had that attitude, and then all of a sudden that love.
Yeah, it was. I called it the coincidence, which is a term coined by Robert Anton Wilson, the author of the Illuminatus trilogy and Schrodinger's cat. He actually wrote a book called The Coincidence, and he basically says in this book that when you're having these coincidences, these really intense coincidences.
It sounds awesome.
It was really just someone's house. Alex, who he'd been traveling Asia for 10 years. I had only just traveled Asia for the first time on this trip. And I sit down at a table, my friend sits across from me, and we both simultaneously look next to us. And the girl he's looking at is a girl he's traveled Asia with for 10 years, one of his closest friends. And the guy I'm looking at is this cat, Henry, from the Water Wheel Foundation in the fish days, early 1990s, and you know, 92 to 99 or whatever. Henry ran the Water Wheel Foundation. And I remember I used to say to him, man, like, you've been to 8,000 fish shows, but you should really fucking travel sometime. And so literally here we are in northern India, and it's not so weird to bump into one person, but to bump into two people simultaneously that don't know each other but know the person that the other person is with, that was the coincidence. The coincidence. And I guess I better lay out my best coincidence yet. In 1995, I met a young cat by the name of Aaron in Amsterdam. Simultaneously, where we lived because the cops had just taken all his glass and smashed it. He was pretty pissed off. I think it was in Spokane or something. Anyway, we were driving through a snowstorm, and him and his buddy Huck were following us to go back to Manitoba. They were like, we'll come blow glass with these weird hemp dudes. And so we invited them. Anyway, we lost them. In the snowstorm, they lost us. And I never saw him again for 3 years. I never saw any of them for 3 years. I never saw Aaron, I never saw Zach, and I never saw Steve. So then I'm going down to another fish show at the Gorge, and I've got a brand new rent-a-car, and I'm by myself. And I'm driving, and I see this kid on the wrong side of the street, and I can tell he's going to hitchhike to the show. He's like a tour head, and he's going to end up on the right side of the street, and he's going to hitchhike. So my brain tells me, and this is the strange part of my coincidence, that he's standing in front of a burger in my car around. I'm fully type A personality. I just go straight. I don't fucking turn around ever. But I turned around, and I went back, and now the kid was on the other side of the street. And so I kind of parked my car, and I walked over, and I said, hey, bro, do you like need a ride? And he was like, oh, my God, dude, my car broke down. Oh, shit, we're going to the Gorge shows. I was like, I'm going to the Gorge shows. Like, no problem. You know, I'll give you a ride. And then he ends up being like, oh, well, I got a friend. At this point, I'm kind of like, oh, fuck, a friend, eh? Like, one person's good, but like another person, I was kind of like, okay. That ended up being Aaron, Marble Slinger, the glass blower, and his friend ended up being Jason Lee, the glass blower. I hadn't seen Marble Slinger for 3 years. We still didn't realize we had met each other in 1995 at the Cannabis Cup. Marble Slinger writes me or phones me a month after the shows, and he says, hey, I think my roommate knows you. And I'm what? He says, yeah, my roommate Zach said he met you on Fish Tour years ago. And I'm like, dude, I highly doubt it, bro. I haven't been to 3,000 Fish Show. I've been to like 25 or 26 Fish shows, so it'd be very rare and random if your buddy met me on a Fish show. Well, fuck, lo and behold, it was Zach from the Spokane and the Missoula shows, the kid that was following us to blow glass. He was Marble Slinger's roommate. And then I bumped into Smiley Steve 2 weeks later at Breeder Steve's party. It was a birthday party for Breeder Steve, the breeder of grapefruit and sweet tooth and all these wonderful strains, sweet skunk, which I have right here. And so all three of them came into my life within a month, left my life for 3 years, and then all came back into my life 3 years later within a month. That's trippy, right?
The only way it's supposed to be. I mean, it turns out me and John have a similar story, and it's, you know, it's dragging on and it's getting long, and it turns out like where I live now, everything that I've ever had came from the same group of people. Like even now, as we recently, you know, produced that grapefruit dry sift, it turns out to be this nice lady I know I met at a soap store ages ago. And, you know, she moved on in life and turned out to start producing medicine for her own ailments. And it's just a really small circle. John ends up being involved in the first bud I ever tried to produce LHO with, and then receives that as a sample that somebody gives them when I first produced my first batch. We didn't meet till months later when he comes back and he's like, what the hell is this thing you gave me in a container? And they're like, ask that guy, it's him. And I mean, that's really how me and John met.
Yeah.
And
that's how I met you.
Pretty much. I mean, John was like, oh, meet Bubbleman. And I'm like, what, blah, blah, blah. And here we are.
Yeah, he passed me some of your LHO. He was like, he gave me the LHO. He's like, check this out. And he was all like, he was like legitimately John, right? Like just, he's like, check this out. Like it's interesting. The guy told me he was using like some sort of a terpene or something. And I was like, what? Terpene? Let me see that. I smelled it. I was like, oh yeah, that's like limonene. Holy shit. And kind of like, yeah, I want to meet this guy. So it's been great to definitely, John is a huge facilitator in that sense. I always give credit to John for really hooking me up with my license. And because he hooked me up with my license, it's really why I'm able to be so free with my knowledge. I mean, I feel like I've always been fairly free with it. But thanks to John and hooking me up with a license, we've been able to really start these videos and the church and all these different things, taking it to a next level because I'm not endangering my family by having cannabis in my possession.
Absolutely. There's some people that are just that life glue, and I guess they're the DJ at the synchronicity dance.
Right. Yeah, I like that. Good metaphor. The DJ at the synchronicity dance, the coincidence.
Mm.
Hey, I like the shirt, Canalytical. Rocking the 90.
Loving it. Thanks.
Yeah, dude. I got my 70 on. 73 action. The year I was born. The year I was born. Check this out real quick. So what is everyone wondering about today? Do we want to direct this conversation in any particular way? Does someone have a question about something that might lead us in?
Yeah, there were a couple of... I know somebody asked me earlier this week, they had made a bunch of fresh frozen, but they had some of the stuff they had set to dry like normal, but then put it in the freezer and ran that and found that they got a greasier result and couldn't explain it. And then I started asking questions of like, well, did you microplane it weird? And he's like, no, before the microplane, I couldn't get it to dry. He's like, all my Girl Scout is greasy, but how could the dryer produce more grease? And it started to get baffling because he's in the mountains and he takes advantage of having a really low humidity climate to make his mountain hash. And I really didn't have an answer. I just didn't have enough experience with dried bubble to say when could that produce a better result or could perhaps more yield.
Well, I have the answer for that because I've seen it, and it's part of why making bubble hash can be counterintuitive. So one thing people ask me often is about dry sift, and does it have to be dry? You know, I've heard a few people are doing like a dry ice type extraction, flash freezing it, cleaning it. For me, these are things that, like, I've seen plants that have been dried properly, and the dry sift comes out amazing. Even material that's been dried a very, very long time. And the thing is the key is drying out that wax membrane. And so when that wax membrane is really fresh, I believe that it can potentially get stuck. It can not break off as easy. And the thing is that it's another counterintuitive thing that we all lean towards cheating. And we all lean towards tricks. That's why BHO is so fucking popular. It's the ultimate cheat. It's the ultimate trick. Fresh frozen is the ultimate water hash trick. Guys that weren't getting melty resin with their dry material were finding they could increase their melt factor by leaving the moisture in the wax membrane and potentially not losing as many terpenes. To me, I think we could grow and breed cannabis so that no matter how dry we dry it, and keep in mind, the first material I ever ran that blew the top of my head off, and in my opinion, helped popularize water hash. It wasn't me, it was that I was making it with the Rene. And the Rene was turning out like as good as it could possibly turn out. And the first time I ran that stuff, it was like 3 months old, like bone dry stuff that he had on his floor of his shop. I literally swept it up into a bag, ran it, and got like stained glass window bubble, full melt, like as melty as bubble gets. And it was bone dry. So, you know, fresh frozen didn't really happen until some years later, and it's you know, it is what it is. Mostly people make small amounts and it gets smoked very quickly. But I think when we move into a commercial production and we're producing for the majority of the world and we have to standardize the resin, that fresh frozen will be a logistic nightmare. It will be very difficult to dry that wax membrane out without degradation in the trichome head. And I know Jim Frere talked about it a little bit when it's attached to the stalk, but once we break that veil, and there's that little cute, I believe that could absorb water and start degrading, and these are all the things that we'll learn, because really right now theory is just that, and it's all based on It's very difficult because it's based on our experiences, and I can tell you from making bubble hash, well over 1,000 times, that my experiences always change as I add new things, and as I make more, I'm like, oh, I've never seen that. It's like, wow, like if I would have only made hash 100 times, I wouldn't have known what I know today. I would have been ignorant, and if I talked about like, oh, this is what's happening, and I know this and this and this, I would have been missing a lot, and I believe I still am missing a lot. So that's why we're here at Hash Church.
Well, we talked about, when you asked me the question last week, I'm like, well, it depends, because if the statement is based on properly dried and cured, just like the apple drying, resolving to the point of naturally cutting itself off the tree, I'm like, that's a whole lot different than what the standard production practice of the majority of people are doing now. So even if it was true for dried, fresh frozen is the new hype, so the statement won't hold together. That's kind of like, well, it depends. We don't have a standardized pre-process. That's why when the guy asked me about why am I getting better melt, and I'm like, I asked him, tell me the truth, is your yield changing? Because if it's your yield changing, I could understand why dried would actually produce you more intact heads than completely, just jumping in live with fresh frozen, wet, bulbous heads that could be getting smashed, could not be getting smashed. But he said his yield was the same, which threw off my, my thoughts on dried, because doing the sift and even just pressing out some sift and then going, holy shit, I can't make it into the donut I wanted, that's stable. And then I make the LHO 2 days later, I'm like, wow, that's stable. It's clearly in the resin, so any guy who, stability is not something we decide. So, like, I think my first sifting, I just luckily got a really stable head that was bone dry, that I could really get a good card going, versus if I just blended up some stuff that was in more of a smoking condition, which would be more 13 to 70% moisture. So
I think as well, another one of the problems, Horatio, is that when we talk to people, how are they doing their information gathering? How are they weighing their material fresh and then wet? Are they drying properly and using a desiccant to get it bone dry? It's like people throw around numbers and generalizations, and I think 99% of the time those numbers confuse the issue, that not everyone's using the same basic math to figure things out. Often you'll get people weigh bubble wet, it hasn't even been dry, or they'll weigh both bubbles wet and not realize that if you ran fresh frozen and you ran dry and you weigh them both wet, they won't weigh the same when they're dry, because the glandular trichome heads from the fresh frozens that hold moisture will be heavier than the dry ones. So these are all little things that can throw a cog into the science. You got there? Hydrometer?
No, yeah, pretty much. This one is for I use it for making rabbit pellets. It's typically measured to 36% humidity moisture, because I need more than that and it wouldn't be as accurate. I stick this in every bag of bud before any moisture can escape to get a general presence of the bag. Yeah. I'll stab it through the pile, and then when I'm at a stable 7 to 9%, then I know it's dry, and I do that every time versus going, ooh, that's dry, because if you get a sativa, it can be dry and still sticky as hell. And an indica can be, wetter and a type of dry that we would consider bone dry. So, like, when it comes to sativas, like, I imagine to dry the barb, you have to over-dry the barb, because you're actually drying super sticky heads versus heads that, roll around on the table. So I guess, these kind of instruments are, to me, I think it's basic, but we need a little bit more of that all around, even just in buying your material. I noticed, I'm like, wow, that's 17% wet. By the time I dry it, that's no pound.
Yeah, I used to use one of those, a smaller version when I was brokering cannabis years ago, and it was, it was very fun to pull it out and have people look at me like, what's that? I'm like, oh, I'm going to tell you how much water's in this herb, bro.
Yeah.
And then I'll do the math for you and tell you that it's like, oh, you're trying to charge me like $17,000 for water?
Yeah.
Can't do that.
That's why I keep it close and on my desk.
Man, so I'm looking forward to Amsterdam. In a few days here, the Cannabis Cup, the Legends of Hash Party. the Dabadoo. And who knows what else is going on. I've seen all sorts of people are throwing parties and birthdays for this and that and the other thing. Should be good. Dane's going to be there. Tony's going to be there.
Of course Tony's going to be there. What's everybody laughing about?
Don't know. Trying to read the questions on the side. Questions about drying live in a very low humidity environment. Is there a set percent to dry in order to speak of plant material? Well, I guess, yeah. I mean, I personally have been happy with 9%, but I don't know when anybody else has tested for themselves and considers bone dry.
Right now, because it's so cold out, everything is bone dry.
So are you guys talking the material when it's actually dry as low as 9%, like sitting in a jar with a humidity gauge in there?
Yep.
Sorry about that, guys. 239 viewers. Let's see if we can kick it up to 300. Oh, 244. Boom.
Yeah, Trendy is right. It's like, yeah, they snap and you lose trikes. The key is to have your screen ready for when you lose those trikes. I mean, that's why we're drying it to that degree. I mean, I wouldn't take it to 9 to smoke. It has to come back up to 13, but I don't smoke, so it's not an issue.
Right on.
Yeah, here's a question for you guys that I don't even know the answer to. What's up with herb that's been jarred that just smells like jarred herb? Like, you know what I'm talking about? Where you just have this, like, there's a smell.
Yeah, I have
Almost.
I find that the jars that I leave that have more light attached to them have more of a lesser smell than the ones that have been sitting in a cupboard and like a wine cellar for like the last year and a half.
Mm.
Well, I actually asked my wife about that subject last night. I'm like, why does everybody put everything in jars? Don't they know that the light is degrading the trichomes? Well, and then she was like, well, they must all sell fast. And I'm like, yeah, but what about people who like to show their curing process? They're destroying their...
I think that'd be improper curing, wouldn't it?
Well, I guess that exposure to light is what made the cure improper.
Yeah, I would have to agree that, you know...
Yeah.
Sometimes Johnny V will give me a bud. Often, actually. And I'll just throw it in my wood box, the bubble box. And I'll tell you, man, those things, he gave me one that was literally dried for like months. And when you grabbed the bud, it was still on a little stalk, and you squeezed it. It wasn't bone dry. It was like perfectly cured.
So here is the bud that is over a year old in this jar. I got a meditator in front of me. And you know what? That is still nice and moist in the middle. And it smells so dank. I wish you guys could see it and smell it, but that's definitely over a year in that jar.
Oh, I believe you, brother. I've got 3-year-old Jack hair. It's really impressive.
But look at that 7-year-old hash you got, Mark. That stuff is amazing. I mean, I don't know if I had bud around for 7 years, if it would still last that long.
I don't think so.
Hash is just like a whole different story. That's why I have to hash everything, because I got weed that's been around for 6, 7 years. I don't even know what to do with it. If I had hash, I could smoke it.
Yeah, I know. It's hard not to sometimes, but I like to have it so I can smoke it with people that have never smoked such things. I really think that that's probably why I have it more than anything.
Yeah, I don't know why I have weed in jars for the last 8 years. I think I'll figure that one out one day.
I'm going to try and convince my friend to bring the 19, or what is it, 91, 2001, 2014. So it's 23 years old this year, my friend's dry sift hash. I haven't smoked it since it was 17 years old. Full melt, red, bone dry, dry sift. Nice, nice, Dane. What do you got, some melts there?
Yeah, flow, 90 micron.
Flow.
You guys were just discussing. Microplaned.
Gotta love the flow. Gotta love DJ Short. I mean, come on.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite terpene profiles. It has so much character when you go in and smell it.
Holy shit.
I love flow, man.
Remember to mute your mics when anyone not talking. Just mute your mic and then unmute it when you're talking.
Bud right here.
Well, maybe it's time for a bowl.
I'll definitely join you for that bong rip. Oh. Some more of that resin that you made for me.
I think I have a really big delay in my connection.
Very
Me
nice.
too, Justin.
I do have the same. Oh, I also have a coffee go. Now,
Yeah,
how do you
these
use coffee
out of
beans
town
so that
hash churches are a little bit harder. A little bit harder than usual. I find I always have a little bit more technical difficulties when I don't have my own strong internet connection. I'm at a hotel here in Toronto, and it is just miserable as fuck outside.
Wow. What's it like in Amsterdam right now?
I'm not too sure, you know, Johnny. I haven't left. Why don't we check it out? Let's look at the weather in Amsterdam. What do we got there? What do we got? Braylorn. We got Kingston, Jamaica. We got Lillooet.
It's 9 degrees.
Well, that's not too bad. It's only 3 in Vancouver and -4 in Whistler.
So,
bad at all.
Mark,
They
you
are
said you
1
messaged-
degree here in Abbotsford this morning. We dropped down to -4. Wow, crazy.
Is that Horatio?
when you landed, you had just typed to me like P1, and I didn't know if that had meant you had gotten the Act Now drops and had gone on P1, or if literally that was like a terminal and you were just saying you had landed. But
I can't remember why I said that. I'd have to have read our whole conversation. I remember typing it or something. I definitely got to try the P1, P2, P3, P4, and pure terpenes while I was in Jamaica, and it was wonderful and amazing and awesome. The capsules are incredible. You know, it's coconut oil and palm oil that they've polarized, and they just produced this beautiful, wonderful thing. I'm impressed. You know, I'm really impressed. People were impressed, and I always tell people that you know, the important factor here is to not get upset with companies that are trying to produce cool products like this. And I told the same thing to the Jamaican people. The products, as amazing as they are, it's the phytocannabinoids that are amazing about the products. That's the magic. So as long as people don't get hypnotized and think that the magic is something else, and we're always just focused on the fact that it's herb, that's the magic. Doesn't matter what you do with it or what you put it in or how you take it, as long as you're taking those cannabinoids that are growing on that cannabis, that's the magic.
Oh, it's sweet, because, yeah, just looking at how Tony's been able to refine the active THC out of his program, because you can easily activate the product yourself by choice, it's allowed, it just looks and feels so much more acute and available to everybody, because you can completely join the program and go into a full therapy without disrupting your life pattern if you're not somebody who's critically ill, but, for instance, has the chickpea virus and needs to still work. You don't have to be fear that you have this big up curve of I got to get used to being high and functioning. But it's completely available to everybody right now. It's actually scary that no one recognizes it. I'm like, wait a minute, why isn't this really more available? Because as much as it's in a bottle, it's a really simple, the pieces that are going with the medicine are also palm oil, that kind of stuff. It's all natural. It's still a herbal product that's the thing I think people don't notice because it's presented so well. It looks pharmaceutical, but it's really a natural product. That's just really professional.
I applaud Tony as well for patenting in a way that patenting so he can do it, not patenting so others can't.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, yeah, he's not out to stop me from enhancing my ability to make drops for other people. He's just protecting himself from GW Pharmaceuticals.
Which is a great thing to do.
Well, I mean, you've got to understand, some of us in this cannabis community have a shot at came from the real world, belong in the real world, and have a real world fight to deal with when we succeed. As soon as you succeed enough to get noticed, there are people who are paid all day to steal from you. That's the part the stoner community has no understanding of. When you grow up, you go out to the real sharks, and that's where, if you want to actually help people, you need a patent, or else you'll just be broke telling a story of who stole from you.
Yeah, it's incredible. I just got here to Toronto a few days ago. I spent a day yesterday with my family, and I hadn't seen a lot of my cousins and my uncle in almost 10 years, if you can imagine. And I was very close with these cousins and this uncle. And so I got to see them the other day, and my one cousin is suffering with lupus. She could barely walk, and she's a very young girl. My cousin's back is degenerating. John, I was actually going to get you. Yeah, good. I was going to get you and Denny in touch. I can't believe how much pain he's in, John. It's unbelievable. It's like all of his vertebrae are slipping and crushing and deteriorating. He hasn't had any surgeries yet, as of yet, so I want you basically mostly to tell him about the yoga and the importance of doing it every day, and then also about your amino acids and any of that other information that you personally, your experience that you've had personally with maintaining pain control, pain management.
No, I definitely sent him an email this morning, Mark. I read that this morning first thing, and I gave him my number, and I said, give me a call this evening, and we could sit down and chat and have a little bit more discussion about amino acids. Is he into using cannabis? Because, I mean...
Dude, he's all over the...
Damn, he cut out.
Oxycontins. He had, like, Oxycontins today. I wanted to get him in here.
Yeah, so that's the whole thing. So now we got to get him on something like any kind of converted form of THC. Like I of course, for me, it's caps because that's what I work with.
He doesn't want to get high though.
Well, we don't have to, and that's one more thing. I was looking at Tony's kind of his P1, P2, P3, P4, and I was taking a look at the CBN and CBDs. And then I took a look at some old testing results, and I started looking at where the cannabinoids were developing, and then I was thinking of where you can actually start doing things like that with the development of the plant itself. So there's definitely ways of doing it, and there's definitely ways of using another amino acid that blocks the euphoric effects of THC.
Yeah, even applying CBD topically along his spine will help the neurons.
Exactly, right? So I mean, there's a lot.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that's looking at, if you're trying to minimize the psychoactivity, the key is just not vaporizing it, not smoking it, because when you inhale it, it's going to be passing through your nasal passageway, which goes into your brain a lot. Applying edibles or any sort of topicals will actually get absorbed by the blood and capillaries in and around that area of your skin. So, possibly like either a body wash or a lotion that he can apply on his back with CBDs in it.
Yeah, that sounds good. Is that you, Mike?
Yep, that's me.
Dude, Mike West, welcome, man. Welcome.
Nice.
What's up?
There was one thing I was going to make mention was this amino acid. It's acetylcholine, CITICOLINE, and it blocks the euphorics of THC. It's just an amino acid that a lot of cancer patients have been mixing because they don't like getting so high from the Rich Simpson oil. And Mike, my neighbor, he's been taking it. He's really found effects how it's slowed him down. I think Horatio, did you put it into his drops too?
Yeah, I mean, that's when you guys gave me that tip. That's when I incorporated into the drops for him to see if by actually blending it at a more, not subatomic level, but you could say more micro level, it basically it can escape being present with citicoline because you're taking it sublingually, which most of it's going to go into your bloodstream directly before swallowing it and sending it to your liver. So the citicoline tends to take the same effect within 15 minutes. So I tried to get it in that format, but each person has their own tolerance and limits that aren't going to help. What I wanted to mention, though, is in Hash Church episode 6, after Tony's able to get his patent, he was talking to me, and he itemizes where you source P1, P2, P3, and P4. So the first real thing is juicing veg plants. You don't have to get it to flower. You don't have to get it to yield. You just got to get it to grow as fast as possible and start getting your prunings. And then so you can take that and you put that in your juice to get your inactive, but then you can also activate it. And you're not getting an active THC, but you're getting the other conversions to, I believe, CVN, and then go to the video. That's the point. He gives it word for word of how, like, that's why I'm just going to rewind it. But we don't need even flowers to produce the program or the main things most people need. And truly, anti-inflammatory solves so many pain issues because inflammation is the reason why it hurts. It's swollen. So if you take away the swelling, it stops pushing against why you had the pain. So the amount that can be done with just veg cannabis is its own fluorescent light industry in itself. That would be the first thing I'd look at to addressing needs without getting psychoactively hit.
Yeah, and I've seen a couple patients with scoliosis respond really well to juiced vegetative leaves. So I mean that's just a really nice way. You throwing vegetative leaves through a wheatgrass blender and taking the juice out of that is a really nice way that not taking it into flour won't have the psychoactivity but still have a lot of the phytonutrients.
Yeah, I just saw Dr. William Courtney speak in Jamaica at the SRC conference in Kingston there. And, of course, for those of you that know about Dr. William Courtney, he's been pretty high up on the cannabis juicing for the last, I don't know if it's been like a decade yet, but it's been a while for him. Very interesting to see. And, of course, River Rock and UCAN has also just recently put up a really great video showing a girl sitting in the greenhouse. She's got her big juicer, and she's just showing the simplicity of how River Rock produces their juice.
That's Jessica, and she actually has a full medical grade lab where she makes her juice at. I just wanted to put her in the greenhouse when I filmed it to make it look cool and stuff. But
it did. It looked great, dude. It was a great video. Super.
My stomach.
Patients rely on that juice, man. They come in every week like clockwork, and it's added to their regimen. It really helps boost their cannabinoid levels in their bloodstream. And especially patients with GI disorders too. It's really super helpful for that.
Well, my question, Dane, was now is there any strain-specific benefits per, like when juicing in veg and then or taking that vegetative leaf and decarbing it? Because I'm like, well, let's get the thickest, most squatty indica and produce as much leaves as possible. Obviously, I wouldn't throw in a thin spindly, but sativa, but if it made a difference, I would go to that effort. At the same time, most people do have a perception that when they think about juicing cannabis, they think about taking the harvested yield and destroying it through a juicer. They have no concept of what gets juiced and the fact that most of their lollipop prunings would help the people in their extended family that they're like, oh, shucks, I wish I had enough cannabis to help somebody, but they don't want to get high. And clearly all the growers around produce enough non-active prunings to help a lot of people.
Yeah, and on that note, we take the bigger fan leaves in the vegetative stage, and we go through and use the plants that are designated for our prana program and our oil capsules. So we're using our CBD-rich leaves. We used to have them separated out. Now it's just a blend of all of them. And soon we're going to be dehydrating it too, so people who don't want to drink the juice but still kind of want to get it. And it's not going to destroy any of the active enzymes or cannabinoids. It's like a vapor dehydration process, and kind of keeps everything intact at the end of the day. I don't know how you exact same.
No, that was the other thing I was going to say. I was like, I have plans to dehydrate the juice so that I can get it into more of a transdermal paste. But I was concerned about which things get damaged over the drying process, and I had to research that. I know how to dry my herbs for tea and how to do it over time, but I didn't know if I could mass produce dried, reduced, then take the juice, dry the juice down, and then make a gel that could be produced topically. But also to know that, yes, you do actually breed for that juicing program. It's not just random leaves. So if I want high CBD juice for a person versus just inactive other cannabinoids, I do have to select for it.
Yeah.
Okay.
We have it labeled too. When we don't have enough available CBD plants, we'll label it. So we have two labels: one that says CBD variety, and one that'll be the mix, either indica or sativa. Just to keep it separate for the patients, so they know what they're getting in their juice. And it's all thoroughly washed and clean and all that good jazz. And we don't spray anything on the plants at River Rock, so we use natural pest control processes.
What are you spraying it with when you wash it? Do you spray it, like wash it just with water? Or?
Yeah, we wash it with water, gloves and a sanitized thing of water, and then we refill that each time.
Excellent.
Just kind of give it a little bit of a bubble bath. Because Jibbs uses filtered water, and his lab is next door, so we kind of steal that.
Nice. That's great. Gotta love that Jibbs's lab is next door. I wish Jibbs's lab was next door to me right now, but...
I want to build
So how are things going in Washington, Mike?
They're good. They're busy. Yeah, we actually just had our the third retail shop in Washington open, but we've been doing a lot of, prepping for what's going to come up next ledge session. They're gonna be passing some medical legislation, which will be good and bad. It sounds like the Gene Cole Wells is going to try and allow everyone 21 and up to grow, but they're going to require licenses for medical production. So
why don't you give everyone a little just background as to what you are doing in Washington and who you're involved.
Yep. So my name is Mike West. I'm the director of tech for Green Lion Farms and Botanical Solutions. We're a 502 licensee, medical marijuana producer and processor. We have a couple different licenses that we put in. We actually have a 502, which we'll be selling for everyone 21 and up, as well as we have medical oil production, CO2, and extracts and vapor pens available in about 60 different shops across Washington. So we do carbon dioxide and organic grown flowers.
Mike, you got muted. If unmute yourself.
Oh, there you go.
All right.
Oh, so yeah, we're going through the whole licensing process that the state's set up out there, and as we go through the licensing, we actually have labs that are doing extractions and production for medical, as well as dual production for rec. So, yeah, so Washington basically has been bringing on their 502 law, and that's going to allow for all the medical production to be produced, as well as by all the patients, as well as having all the recreational cannabis grown through their licensed facilities. It's a little bit different than the way Colorado's set up, but it's nice because we're allowed to go up to an acre for each license. So
one question I had for you, I noticed at least, it's a Facebook trend. It's not a real world trend of people who, are working all day. But everyone seems to be on this bandwagon to jump to Oregon. Is it because of less regulations to get into the business? It seems like people were frustrated with the licensing process that they weren't legit enough. Seem to be sometimes state jumpers. Is that something you see happening on the real level, or is that something I only see on Facebook?
So Oregon's law is going to have significantly less tax. I think I saw it was $35 per ounce, versus Washington, which has 25% at each step of the process. That said, there's still going to be market competitive prices, and they're still going to be able to adjust the taxes in Washington. So I'm less worried about that. What I think it is the state of Washington has such lax medical laws right now that all of the established businesses are already have established clientele and all the legal purview. So it's we're capable of being able to provide medicine for about 600 patients right now, whereas under the taxed recreational, we only have 3 retail outlets in the city, and it's just due to the city's requirement of everybody going through the whole pre-licensing, whereas in Colorado they just let everybody who had a dispensary get their license. So it's kind of been a pain. The state hasn't been very cooperative to the industry, but I'm excited for both Oregon and Washington, honestly. Washington's just having their first year, but they only got a quarter of the licenses licensed that applied this through the spring harvest or spring planting.
No, it's I watched Washington for the hopes that Canada would develop. When they put out their program to crush personal grows, it sounded for a split second like, well, if we all get licensed, if we meet some criteria, we'll all be able to enter in the business at our own level. So from a Canadian standpoint, Washington looks lovely. I'm like, we would love to be just taxed and be able to get to work.
Here in Oregon, we're not even going to be legal until 2015, 2016. So that's not even going to start.
Exactly, and that's the crazy thing. I'm so excited to just know that I'm not going to get raided because we're paying our tax, right? Except for every single step of the way, we have to have 10 times as much regulation. Everything has to be inspected, and then permitted, and then built, and then re-inspected, re-permitted. So it's proper business, but the way that the state has set it up, the state of Washington has failed to actually incentivize the small artisan farmer. The state's allowed for everybody who has the multi-millions of dollars of backing to get licensed, but the majority of the people that they should have been licensing should have been the 1,000 square foot greenhouse growers, not the 30,000 square foot indoor growers that are just building their shit. And the people that actually had a successful year were the ones that
growing peas for profit.
Oh yeah, and that's the hard part. Like seeing these companies already getting set up. The only ones that are really going to survive are the ones on the eastern side of the state that grew outdoors this year. And there was 3 or 4 shops that opened, all of them with their dated bud that said October on it. And I mean, it's what's crazy is what I'm seeing from the testing labs. We're gonna have a shit ton of them fail for microbial.
That's exactly what I was thinking, Mike.
Mhm. So I've already been testing with a couple different labs. We've had a couple different groups that are they tried to put plants out in July because that's when they got their license. So they're only starting to harvest them now, and by now they're getting rained on. So it's going to be an interesting year, but it's going to be good for extracting. So
have you?
Yeah, your machine. How can you get your machine going more than it's possibly going now?
Oh, so we have one currently operational. That we're getting licensed for 502. We're adding a second one as soon as the license gets issued, so that we'll actually be able to have our medical continue operating. The state of Washington doesn't let us 502 licensee process for medical marijuana currently. That's a conversation we've already had with a couple senators that are preparing the bill for next year. But it's as current. As soon as we get our first lab on doing the rec weed, we'll have to have a parallel lab running our CO2 for medical. So we'll end up having essentially 2 labs in 2 different suites of the same building. One of them processing for the home gardens, one of them for the commercial gardens, and the commercial one primarily going into vapor pens, and then into the edibles to all the other processors.
Well, 2 questions. Have you ever, because I typically don't see anybody, it's not mandatory to pay for microbial testing for extracts. Have you ever seen that, when the failed material seems to just disappear and all of a sudden there's this flush of low-cost extracts on the market? Does any of it, certain methods, cross over and actually pass on some of those degenerative conditions in the bud, whether it be powdery mildew or botrytis, like things that, like I know botrytis should not, you should not attempt to continue on once you identify botrytis in your material. You should just give it up to the bonfire. But like at first I thought, well, do they separate it because of bureaucratic reasons, rec and medical, or is there literally standards that people have to go through for medical that are much more stringent? That's why I wondered, does medical have mandatory microbial testing on oil, for instance, or is that not done yet?
Yeah, so it's not done required. It will be as of the law that's going to be introduced in January. The state requires all the 502 weed to be mandatorily tested across the board, and we're going to see that be a mandatory testing across the board. Now, you can sterilize most stuff. There are ways of doing it. Obviously, there are you mentioned botrytis and a couple others. Anything that has aflatoxins, you don't want to be concentrating the aflatoxin. But there's obviously ways that will be allowed to go through, and you can actually filter it out, down to the micron or submicron, where any of the spores actually won't be able to get through. But that's going to, of course, have to go through a ton of chemical processing. And that I'm sure will end up being the lower end margin of hash oils that the market ends up getting. There will have to be, and that's the state requires everybody to get tested. So we'll have people fail them, and then just have lots that are sitting there that will have to get processed. And right now what we can do is process them to the
bacteria are so much smaller than that.
Oh yeah, totally. And unless if you're sending it through multiple different chemical washes, you're not gonna you still have to have it tested prior to and after. And then you have to worry about what type of bacteria it was to make sure that you're not concentrating any sort of neurotoxin.
Well, I've done so many trials with it, and when I've achieved success, I'm like, nobody's going to do this at work. They're going to try to dodge they'll put it in a pen. So the fact that you tell me that microbial testing on extracts is now becoming mandatory is that key I was looking for, because I find that there are many nefarious ways to disappear that failed bud. Even in a tested failed bud situation, they would typically disappear into vape pen oil. So that fact that gets tested and then gets found out, and if you fail to do a good job removing it, you also get found out for the chemicals you use. Now I feel a lot better about that climate, because outdoors does bring on that new element that indoors typically it has a limited amount of characters involved.
Yeah, and I think that's why you'll end up always having the open market. You'll always have outdoor grown flowers that naturally have different microbials showing up on them. As soon as you put them in a greenhouse or any sort of indoor situation, you can control that. cross contamination a lot more. So and that's, as much as I love growing organically, there are good bacteria as well as bad bacteria we want within the garden. And the last thing you want to have is bad bacteria showing up anywhere, or bad insects. So, but the same thing holds true. Even though we use integrated different sort of integrated predatory insects, do those predatory insects leave any sort of microbial contamination or insect contamination on the flowers? Potentially. Fortunately, we're doing it in 100% organic, soil to oil. So everything gets sent through multiple different micron levels of filtration before it gets prepared for any sort of consumption.
No, absolutely. That's kind of like, well, look, ladybug poop won't hurt you because it's going to hit the filters of any just basic coffee filter process. When you get into the glass microfiber filtration, or it's, the 6-hour filtration, I just look at the culture and look at how many people are going to cut that corner. And that was my biggest fear, is once you do the work and you know how hard you had to work for it, all the people aren't going to do that work, just because growing organically means you've got to know all those bacteria. Not growing organically means you ignore them and you spray and you kill everything. So it just means more work to keep your science good, and because those regulators are eventually going to get a hate on for a good bacteria and screw up our test.
Oh, yeah, we've actually had to go to them for that because, as written, the law said total microbial count, not harmful microbial count. Mm-hmm. Now, those three words right there could be really bad to all organic growers, because total microbial count means a very different things than harmful microbial count. And it's, so a lot of the growers are going to have to go through processes where they have to either during their flushing, go through and wash off their plants of any bacterial colonies. If they don't, and there is any bacterial spores residually on there, and that just happens to be the one that the lab plates out and tests, and all of a sudden you got a whole bunch of inventory that needs to get either processed or retested.
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. That subtle word, total microbial count versus toxic, harmful, negative, or some delineation. So when I thought you had to fight for which side of the list, you just told me it doesn't matter. Anything shows up, it's considered bad. It's a really narrow-minded viewpoint.
Yeah, and the state has actually kind of worked with us. That's actually something I had to address, because there was one of the first people that opened. We're an organic farm, and they used organic Fuller teas. So when they had stuff get plated, they got tested and sent to the test, and it was a one of the bacteria that would normally occur in a tea. And it does that pass, does that fail? Technically, it's a bacteria, but having to go to the state and explain to them what that bacteria is, the hopefully a good organic farm is going to be able to recognize that.
Absolutely, because the goal of a compost tea brewer is to brew as much beneficial bacteria as possible. So I'm like, well, because I look at it under a microscope, I'm like, well, look at that, in 1 inch by 1 inch, it's an ocean. If that's going to the lab, it's all you're going to hear is the press release: 1 billion microbes on a leaf, ixnay for your company. You would have no idea that it's common, it's beneficial, and without it, you wouldn't be able to digest. There's typically those type of ignorances in the initial legislation that sometimes that's the thing you said about the small farmer. He's going to get eaten up in those failed tests and go out of business because of the first few years of crummy, pretty much paperwork.
Yeah, but unfortunately, and there's a lot of ways that that's where drying it out gets as quickly as possible. It gets so tantamount. When we do fresh frozen, I had somebody bring in a bunch of moldy weed that they had just decided to cut down and then instantly freeze. It came out as a giant block of ice, and I had to politely explain to him that I couldn't process that either as fresh frozen or as CO2 because it was a giant block of moldy weed. And then, so is there are situations where we can process it all out, but then we have to go through all this filtration. If you don't treat it as it is, you could potentially do even more harm to patients. The last thing you want to have is somebody that just happens to be allergic to that type of mold and have a couple of those mold spores get through the microbes.
Absolutely, and pretty much get projected into their bronchial stream, depending on how they ingest.
That's 100%. Yeah.
Unfortunately, there are ways of sterilizing dry sieve. There are ways of sterilizing water wash. There's ways of, as with everything. The key is being able to understand, what the input what goes into your product. And if I see something that looks like it has mold or mites on it, I'm gonna make sure that I force the guy to winterize it, not just send it through a basic extraction. So, and that's where you can go into having it like, some control on it and be able to say, okay, you probably don't want to have that. If you have any sort of bacterial mold spores, you want to take it down to the, 10, 20, ideally 5 or even half a micron filtration. But do people really like the sappy oil? That if you send it down to a 5 micron filter or half of a micron, that'll remove the majority of the lipids, especially after chilling it.
All my oil is all lipids removed. I can't vaporize lipids at all with my lungs, so that's all I've ever produced in a culture of, if it's not hard, you must have fucked up. So that's kind of one of the things. Winterization as an art form is completely lost for this dewaxing, which is a partial process, no matter how much lumps you collect in your bin. It's not the most harmful of the compounds. Only winterizing does that, but due to commercial...
Yeah, now with water extraction, you pull all that mold right through the water.
Yeah, here's a question. I did a run and I got some PM in the end, so I threw it in the freezer, and I have weed that was full of PM, and when I started washing it, it was floating to the top and it was looking like snot, and I was able to actually start scooping it off as I slowly worked with it. Any thoughts on that, guys?
Add hydrogen peroxide.
Okay.
To your water wash.
Okay. Because I have, this was just like a first run, but I have some more, and it's not like overly abundant. It's like it's there a little bit, so I've got most of it out. But I mean, of course, I've had it in the freezer for a couple months, and I'm just starting to play around with it. So there were some ideas about shaking it in jars, and I've gone through a few different things. But just some thoughts on it since you were talking about it. I just kind of want to hear what you had to say about it. So.
Yeah, obviously, what most bacteria's worst enemy is UV light. That'll give most bacteria cancer. UV sterilization as your dry screening stuff will kill stuff, but it won't, it won't actually go through and remove the bacterial spores. The only way you can, prevent prevent the spores from getting through is sending it through, understanding what it is, and then being able to send it through some form of filtration that'll either destroy the spores, or the filtration which prevents them.
Right.
And that's where you want to identify what bacteria you have, what mold you have, and then identify what size spores those would be.
I threw it right in the freezer right away, and that was just my first thought. Okay, I'll just freeze it for now, and then I'll deal with it later. So.
Yeah, well, you can, take it out, dry it out as dry as you can, and because the key with all mold, is drier and colder is gonna have them growing slower.
Yeah, no, wash it with water and ice. I think add the water and use it into some kind of an extraction for. But no, just as you were talking about, I wanted to ask you about it. That's thank you.
Well, look at it this way: like if you do your water wash and then you peroxide it, that's because you're essentially with powdery mildew, you're trying a mechanical separation by gravity and then a sterilization of your water. After that, like let's say you're using a tumble machine and you pour out, you're going to have to separate your heads and then re-wash, because you got to also wash the peroxide out now. You almost kind of have to do 3 runs, so because you're essentially gradiating it out, so it would just be like 220 bag over and over and over again, so that you can keep getting until you get no powdery mildew phenomenon on your top water. So you would do your run, you get your 220, then you chuck off your water. Now you're going to start working out your peroxide water, because that's going to bleach your trichomes and do other things. The benefit of going that route, the UV will still it'll completely destroy all your terps in the sterilization program. It's just like why irradiating your weed to clean it makes for shitty weed. So UV lights don't tend to save it, because we won't smoke terpless oil, but a UV light would save it if you made medibles. So it's not a big issue. But in your case, I assume you're trying to save it for smokability, so you need to physically keep using the water, and basically the difference between the mold spores and the trichome heads to wash them free, do that peroxide wash to kill everything on the heads, and then just continuously wash and rinse until all debris is removed. Then you could smoke it and try it. But that's reasonable with powdery mildew if you have a lot. That's kind of why I'm here in Soil to Oil, and I'm like, yeah, we moved past it being worth it to filter out other people's garbage. They screwed up, and why make our workday twice the work for the same material? But in our own work, we'll work really hard and work all night to save and filter out that those mistakes. So it's kind of why we know how, but we don't want to necessarily automatically do it. But in your case, if those are your meds, even if you're going to use them topically, yeah, we should try doing several pass mechanical separation, since we know it's powdery mildew, and I get them on my squash, and we're getting them on all kinds of foods we typically eat in this region, so we know it's not deadly by any threat.
Here's a question that was in chat. Does winterizing completely wipe out all the lipids?
If you perfect your art, yes, and your filters are tight enough.
That also depends on the size of microns. You know, if you look at, you know, chilling lipids or waxes to different temperatures, you know, -20 versus -40 versus dry ice at, you know, -100. You know, you're going to have different terpenoids fall out at different lipids or waxes fall out. The waxes are going to fall out at a you know, relatively warmer temperature than anything that's naturally more liquid. So, you know, sending it through a -20 and then a 10 micron wash, you can actually preserve some of the lipids and create a stable shatter, whereas taking it down to 5 microns, you produce something more of a sap. So there are different ways you can actually control the lipid consistency in it, both with temperature as well as with the micron size.
Cool. Yeah, no.
Relationship to dewaxing or winterizing with a second solvent, which is actually pushing the fats out of the actual.
Explain the difference between dewaxing and winterizing.
I mean, well, that's the difference. I can winterize out all those lipids without temperature with a second polar solvent that is literally pushing it out. That is why winterizing produces a complete product, where dewaxing, it's all a game of stratifying sizes, and none of it is complete. But because of the hunt for terpenes for marketability, you can modulate your experience. In the case of me vaporizing it, I'll recognize it all. It'll just be different levels of pain and asphyxiation. But second solvent, you can leave it on your windowsill and it will do it completely. It's just now the final step is getting your micron small enough to grab it all. But most of it coagulates within itself and produces its own terrible filter that takes hours to clear. But once expelled by alcohol, the fats cannot redissolve unless you have nonpolar still in your substance. So essentially, that's why it works on a windowsill. It does. That's why after you can pour more alcohol through, that will re-extract all your alcohol available terpenes that are trapped in those lipids, but you won't re-extract the lipids. That is a little bit more of a secret tech that I never said till now, but people might as well know. Those lipids, you can get it back to room temperature and you're still filtering. Just wash out the rest with alcohol to clearly regain your alcohol terpenes. Or else I couldn't have at least come in connoisseur choices position with my winterized 0 ppm oil. Is that Mark packing in the back? Is he gone? Is that
no, he's getting ready. He's definitely gonna have to probably. He's off to Amsterdam. Guys.
Yeah. I gotta get going soon. I just found out the traffic is really bad. It's snowing, and apparently there's a race today on the streets. They've closed down Jarvis, which is the street I'm on right now. Because I looked outside, there's no traffic, and that's because no one can get to where I am, and the people trying to pick me up have been trying to pick me up for an hour and a half. Good old Toronto.
They'll get the transit to the airport eventually.
The next Hash Church next Sunday, I'll be landing in Amsterdam around 11 a.m. Hopefully, I can make it to where you are for our next time and maybe use my phone.
I'll be there, brother.
I know you will. You know where I am. I'll definitely be FaceTiming you. Dane, everybody else.
Sure, we get in touch with you for sure.
And I never did get a talk with Chester, so let me know if he's still interested or anything like that.
Yeah, I think he lost his passport or something.
Oh, that sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah, well. That's okay. I have a nice
Yeah, it's a bummer. I think he's still trying to figure it out, but I'm not really exactly sure.
You can do it in 24 hours. You just have to have some ID and pay a little bit extra money.
Yeah, it's never as easy as...
It never is.
I lost one in Thailand once. Oof.
I remember you telling me all about that nightmare you had.
It was...
I lost my passport in Thailand as well at a Burning Man party.
Did you? Crazy. Well, check mine out. I went to leave the hotel and the lady was like, I was like, where's my passport? She's like, I don't have your passport. I'm like, yeah, I gave it to you for the room. She's like, no, you never gave us your passport. I was like, fuck. Spent the next, like, definitely 11 or so hours going back and forth from embassies to, like, this government office to that government office, and finally got the passport. And when I went back to go and get my bags that I had in storage, the guy just, he goes like this and gives me my old passport. I was like, are you fucking kidding me? So I basically had 2 passports, which was a total heat score. I had to announce it at the border when I came in. I was like, I have 2 passports, and that was a whole ordeal.
And never swear at the lady who's checking your bags going to the airport. I think I'm going to do a nice little rip here, some 120 that presently made. It's the Dennis Hopper, and let me tell you guys, this is some pretty killer.
Which one is it, Johnny?
That would be the one I got from Justin and Aaron, and that's the Larry Lemon Cross with the Larry OG is what they're calling it. And they call it Dennis Hopper or something.
Hop of Dennis.
Yeah, it's some pretty, well, some beans that I popped. That's what they named it. I don't know. There's different. We were hashing things out at that point.
Hashing things out.
Hashing things out.
You guys are the best. You guys are the best. I'll tell you, Hash Church for me is over, guys. I have to get out of this hotel within the next 15 minutes. But of course, all of you here in the Google chat are welcome to hang out and puff bowls with one another. I'm off and on my way, and I will see you guys in Amsterdam at the Cannabis Cup. Thanks for hanging out, Horatio. Johnny B, I'll see you soon. Thanks for coming in, Mendo, Pierre, Trendy, Tyler. Have a good one.
Peace, YouTube.